how would a return home be possible under the mighty grip of the Babylonian Empire? According to the Hebrew Bible, King Cyrus called the anointed, and the Messiah of God would change everything.
Cyrus was a remarkable military conqueror. Starting from a very small kingdom in what is today southern Iran, he rapidly expanded as far west as what is today Turkey, out into Central Asia, and perhaps most importantly into Mesopotamia, where he captured Babylon, maybe the most important city in the
Edgy, can you
world
give me
at that
the
time, in
remote?
539 BC.
After conquering Babylon, Cyrus issued a decree that completely changed the way kings rule conquered peoples, and that foreign policy would begin to open the way for God's promise of blessing to the world to be fulfilled.
One of the most important textual finds in all of ancient archaeology was the Cyrus cylinder.
The Cyrus cylinder is a football-sized clay object that was found in Babylon in the 1870s, and it records a decree issued by Cyrus of Persia upon his taking the city of Babylon in 538 BC.
This is a barrel-shaped clay cylinder written in Akkadian, that is, in the ancient Semitic language. It was discovered by a man called Hormuz Wassam, who worked for the British Museum, in the city of Babylon. And we know that the Persians, especially under Cyrus, allowed captives to go back. And this proclaims a different policy from that pursued by the Assyrians and Babylonians before, who had transported populations from one place to another, but did not allow them to return.
So the Cyrus cylinder is a very important document because it shows us how the Persians are able to successfully appeal to local customs and traditions in order to gain support for and allegiance to their rule. Cyrus was very successful in using a traditional format, this kind of inscription, to proclaim that he respected the gods of Babylon, that he would allow people who had been exiled or deported to return to their homes, and that he would restore gods back to their original places.
Cyrus was the first king in history that allowed the people that he had conquered to worship God in the ways that they wanted to.
Today, you can visit the United Nations building in New York and see a copy of the Cyrus cylinder, which is actually a replica of the original imitation today.
In the Bible, it talks about how Cyrus gives permission for the Jews to return to Jerusalem and commissions them to rebuild the temple. And this is an amazing and important thing and part of God's plan.
This is what King Cyrus of Persia says. The Lord, the God of heaven, has given me all the kingdoms of the earth and has appointed me to build him a house at Jerusalem in Judah. Whoever is among his people, may his God be with him, and may he go to Jerusalem and Judah.
It's early in the morning here in Japan.
The God of Israel, the God who is in Jerusalem. King Cyrus also brought out the articles of the Lord's house that Nebuchadnezzar
I just
had
woke
taken
up.
from Jerusalem and had placed in the house of his gods. King Cyrus of Persia had them brought out under the supervision of Mithridath, the treasurer, who counted them out to Sheshbazzar, the prince of
Hello.
Judah. The gold
Yeah,
and
it's
silver
okay.
articles totaled
It's morning here in
5,400.
Japan.
Sheshbazzar brought all of them when the exiles went up from Babylon to Jerusalem.
The fact that God uses Iran and Persia basically to take care of the captives of Israel, not just to bless a nation, but to make that nation a blessing to all nations, all people on earth, is a great fact to be remembered.
Even today in the 21st century, it's reported that 70% of the population of the world live in countries where they do not have freedom of religion or freedom of worship. But in Cyrus, the great Persian king, we encounter a very open-minded, tolerant king who allowed the people that he had conquered to worship God in the ways that they wanted. So Cyrus actually is a king who installed freedom of religion and freedom of worship. You're talking about 2,500 years ago.
Isaiah not only wrote about Cyrus as a Messiah of God, but also about a future Messiah who would be more than just a man.
For a child will be born for us, a son will be given to us, and the government will be on his shoulders. He will be named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace.
And the passage talks about how his kingdom will be an eternal kingdom. And it just dawned on me that this son who is to come, this child who is to be born, who according to Isaiah 7:14 will be born of a virgin and he will be called Emmanuel, God with us. This son is not just one prophet in the long line of prophets. This son is going to be mighty God, and he will establish an eternal kingdom.
God used that King Cyrus and the events around him and the future kings in the land of Persia to fulfill his absolute promise that there will be the Messiah, Christ, the Messiah, to come on earth and be basically the savior of the world.
And it was Jesus who described his purpose for living.
The Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many.
And it was also Isaiah the prophet who spoke of a servant of God who would suffer and die for all people.
But he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon him, and by his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all.
That message that was given to Abraham, preserved throughout the history by intervention of different nations, including the Persians, fulfilled in the person of Jesus Christ in the bosom of the Israelite family, prepared the road and the hearts and melted many hearts throughout the history. And now that nation, the Persian nations and the Arabs and the Elamites and the church and the Chinese and all nations are blessed today. The message is simple. That promise that was given to Abraham is for every tribe, every nation.
A few weeks after the death and resurrection of Jesus the Messiah, as his disciples were gathered in Jerusalem, the Bible tells us that the Spirit of God fell on them. The Spirit of God birthed the church in the New Testament times. The Bible tells us that people had come from all over the world to celebrate the Jewish feast in Jerusalem.
AG,
But many people
shower
might
now.
not realize that the first three
Clean the
people
table,
groups
please.
that are mentioned in Acts chapter 2, verse 9, Parthians, Medes, and Elamites, are people groups from Iran. Iranian people were present in Jerusalem, whether they were Jews who had lived in the Persian Empire since the time of the exile, or the God-fearing people, Iranians that had come to faith in the true God because of their contacts with the Jewish community. Nevertheless, Iranian people were there in Jerusalem. Iranians were filled with the Spirit of God, and we believe that when Iranians went back to their home countries, they took the message of the good news of Jesus the Messiah to their own people. We look at church history hundreds of years later. The Iranians took the gospel, the good news of Jesus, to China through the Silk Road. In fact, the Chinese people called Christianity the Persian religion because they had heard the gospel from Persian Christians, Persian followers of Christ. So I am very proud, I feel very honored as an Iranian follower of Jesus that God has used the people of Iran in a significant way to bring hope and healing to the nations. I think a Persian rug can be a beautiful symbol of how God is at work in history, how God is at work in our lives. When you look at a rug, one side of it can look very rough. the knots, the threads. The backside of the rug might not look very beautiful, but you have faith that the other side of the rug it is a glorious, beautiful pattern, rich with different colors and textures. I believe that's how we need to look at how God is at work in the world. It might look very messy from our side of history right now, but we have faith that this God whose purpose is to bless the nations, this God whose purpose is to establish the shalom, the peace, the kingdom of Jesus, that he is actually making a beautiful story. One day, the patterns will make sense. One day, we will see the glory of God's work in
Not
our
right
life,
now. I'm not gonna
just the
shower
way
right
we
now. I
see
just
and
got
enjoy
done
the glory
finished.
of the Persian
I'm not
Gulf.
done finish. Is that English?
I am finished, but I'm full.
Is the United States on the way to yet another full-scale confrontation with Iran? Iran has begun its counteroffensive. The war in the Middle East is reaching a new level. Right now, Iran has launched 7 offensive missiles at the United States bases in Qatar and Iraq, and the United States is on alert to strike back. This is an immediate threat in the wake of a strike on the huge American base in Qatar. Iran is moving launchers forward. And at this very moment, Iran's response to the American attack on its nuclear sites is on its way. Qatar has closed its airspace, and explosions have been heard there after 6 Iranian missiles were fired at the vast United States base in the country. A 7th missile was launched at the base in Iraq. Now the question is whether Iran will mount a further counterattack against the United States of America. Israel continues its preemptive strikes, and the Israeli Air Force is attacking dozens of targets in Iran. I'm Yair Pinto, and with me is Mati Shoshani, and together we bring you the whole truth about what is happening in Israel. This is day 12 of the counteroffensive against Iran's Revolutionary Guards. Mati Shoshani, it's good to be here with you, and I said that you're the greatest expert on the subject of Qatar. So, are the Qataris now playing, or rather eating the pudding themselves that is cooked after years of bankrolling Iran? Are we now seeing them harmed by this evil entity in the Middle East? So guys, what do you think about that? But before we answer, I want to make sure you do not forget to click the subscribe button so that you stay tuned in real time and never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Yeah, the subscribe button is supposed to come up here to the screen. Never forget to hit it. Thank you so much, guys. So, Mati, it's just a crazy situation. Hope you're doing well. I didn't say hello.
Hello. Good to see you again, Yair. Look,
Definitely.
first of all, thank you for the compliment. Maybe between the two of us, I'm slightly more knowledgeable about Qatar than anyone else, but not an expert.
What?
Look,
Definitely.
we have the privilege of spending time with the experts on these topics. And what we know about the Qataris is that they are an octopus that works in many directions. And today's attack is, I think, one of just many residual effects of this attack that are going to happen. Look, the method of operation for the Iranians always was and will be disruption and terrorism. That's the way they always operate. What they're trying to do is cause fear and to cause damage around this region, and tonight is no different than that. And I want to start out by saying that this entire conversation is framed by the fact that the Iranian response or counterattack at this point, I don't know what's going to come next, but so far is disproportionately small compared to what happened to them. The U.S. brought down the might of the biggest and strongest fighting force ever to walk the face of this earth, and the Iranians sent a puny couple missiles that are less than what they sent to Israel most days of the week. So let's put this all in proportion. And as far as the Qataris are concerned, look, they're playing the game from all angles. They have U.S. bases on their soil. They deal with Hamas directly. They deal with Iran directly. They try to barter deals on behalf of Israel. And then the next day, they spread false propaganda about what happened. Well, all propaganda is false. They spread false news about what happens in Israel. So look, this is another day, another usual day of business to them. As far as they're concerned, as long as they're listed with the other countries that are, top dogs in the Middle East, they're happy with that. And as far as the Iranians are concerned, I don't know where they're going with this. We've been expecting sort of a counterattack, but this is not very impressive. It was fired at a base that was empty, without many people, or any people in it, and the U.S. was expecting the counterattack, and they act accordingly. So, are they just trying to save face here, or are they actually planning something more substantial here?
Well, I'm going to try to set base because they already notified the Americans before the attack was coming. So America had the time to evacuate its forces, to prepare to intercept all these missiles, and they did that. And just to update you guys what's going on. So at these moments, Iran is striking the huge American
From the legendary Medes establishing their rule in the 8th century BC to the powerful Achaemenid Empire under Cyrus the Great, Iran witnessed a tapestry of cultures and conquests. Following Alexander the Great's empire, the Parthians rose to prominence, governing vast territories and fostering Greek cultural influences. Later, the Sasanian Empire flourished, blending Zoroastrianism with administrative prowess. Keep watching, because Iran's history unfolds with dynamic shifts, from Islamic conquests to the rise of the Safavids and beyond, leaving enduring legacies in Persian culture and identity. Ancient settlers of the Iranian plateau. Around 2000 BCE, the Iranian plateau witnessed the arrival of Aryans, known as Indo-Iranians, who migrated from Central Asia to settle in the region. Among these early settlers were the Medes, an Aryan ethnic group who established themselves prominently in western Iran. They divided their territory, referring to the northwest as Little Media and the Zagros Mountains region as Great Media, with their capital situated in Hegmatane. Diocese, the legendary first ruler of the Medes, is said to have governed for much of the first half of the 7th century BC, according to accounts by the ancient historian Herodotus. The Medes, who founded their state in the late 8th century BC, achieved a significant milestone by overthrowing the Assyrian kingdom, then renowned as the most dominant and ruthless power of the time. However, their reign was brought to an end around 550 BC, when Cyrus the Great of Persia emerged victorious, marking the transition of power from the Medes to the Persians, and the beginning of the Achaemenid Empire. The Achaemenid Persian Empire, founded in 550 BC. The Achaemenid Empire stands as a testament to ancient imperial grandeur, encompassing vast territories from Anatolia, modern Turkey, and Egypt across Western Asia to northern India and Central Asia. The empire's origins trace back to the defeat of King Astyages of Media by his grandson Cyrus II, also known as Cyrus the Great, who ruled Persia from 559 to 530 BC. This pivotal victory reshaped the geopolitical landscape of the Near East, consolidating power under Persian rule. Cyrus's conquests extended beyond Media. He decisively defeated the Lydians in western Anatolia and overthrew the Babylonian Empire, which had dominion over Mesopotamia and the eastern Mediterranean regions. These conquests not only expanded the territorial expanse of the Achaemenid Empire, but also laid the foundations for a sophisticated imperial administration that would govern diverse cultures and peoples across vast geographical regions for centuries to come. From Alexander to Parthian conquest. After the death of Alexander the Great in 323 BC, his vast empire was divided among his generals, marking the beginning of the Hellenistic period. Seleucus Nicator, a trusted general who had served under Alexander, took control of much of Alexander's Asian conquests. focusing primarily on the territories that encompassed Iran at their core. In 312 BC, Seleucus I established the Seleucid Empire, which became a significant power in the Hellenistic world. The empire's reach extended over large swathes of territory, including Asia Minor, Syria, Mesopotamia, and the Iranian Plateau, with Seleucus I assuming the title of Basileus, or king. The Seleucid Empire's reign over western Iran endured for approximately 80 years, characterized by a tumultuous history marked by continuous internal strife and external conflicts. Despite its initial strength and extensive territories, the Seleucids faced formidable challenges from the east. The Parthians, a rising power in the region, steadily expanded their influence and military prowess. By the time of the late 2nd and early 1st centuries BC, the Parthians had effectively dismantled Seleucid authority in Iran, asserting their dominance over the region. Concurrently, in the western territories of the Seleucid Empire, the Roman Republic emerged victorious in a series of military campaigns, ultimately annexing these territories and further weakening Seleucid control. These developments marked significant shifts in the geopolitical landscape of the ancient Near East, as power dynamics shifted between the Seleucids, Parthians, and Romans, shaping the subsequent trajectories of these civilizations. A powerful force in ancient Iran, the Parthian Empire, also known as the Arsacid Empire, emerged as a formidable political and cultural entity in Iran from 247 BC to 224 AD. Founded by Arsaces I, who led the Parni tribe in conquering
Do you really believe that the war between Israel and Palestine started only because of politics or territory? What if I told you that the true reason behind
It sounds like, based on what we're reporting, this was telegraphed. It sounds like, based on what we're reporting, this was telegraphed and designed to avoid casualties. Why would Iran do that? Why would Iran telegraph and design a military attack to avoid casualties?
Well, along the lines of what I said, they have to appease their people. Their whole premise of governance has been, on the military front, the geopolitical front, we're going to stand up to the big Satan and the little Satan. And people in Iran know that the United States and Israel both have now attacked the Iranian assets. And I think, again, they've done this at least twice now, where they don't want to bring the full measure of United States force upon them. But they need to tell their people they've done something, and they can tell the Iranian people they did respond, and they can exaggerate the degree of success and the tit for tat nature of the response. And that's what many people think they'll do, and this could be a sign of that. But this is not a closed thing. It's not like they get one chance to respond. They may respond that way and then respond a different way. Charlie, I think the biggest variable in all of this is the Iranian people and what the government feels they need to do to appease them or keep them from demanding a change in government or have a perception that they're a failed regime. And we don't know. Most of the reporting out of Iran, and I'm unfortunately not in a position to do much reporting there directly, but most of the reporting suggests that they're rallying around the government. They're reacting negatively to Israel and the United States, and that's good for the government because that means they've got more leeway in how they respond without having to worry about losing face with their own people.
Okay, 6 missiles launched so far by Iran right now as we're here on air towards Qatar. I'm told many have been intercepted. There are multiple explosions over Doha, and those interceptions are ongoing right now. So it's conceivable that Iran kind of, hey, it's coming, and they didn't quite want to kill Americans, but they wanted to show face domestically. And they said, hey, we did this thing, it's over. And I mean, I could see it if these missiles are successfully intercepted and no U.S. troops die. What does your reporting show, Mark, about how President Trump would respond? Do you think he will take an off ramp and then kind of just put this thing, consider it done, if no U.S. troops die?
In the short term, I do think that's what the president would do if it's just some buildings hit. However, there's an ongoing issue, right? The president, to the extent, and again, you've taken heat, as you said, both called an isolationist and called a warmonger. The president is committed to not letting Iran develop a nuclear capability or intercontinental ballistic capability. The Israelis seem to be on this, and they continue to not only hit our targets in Iran, but with a great deal of confidence. But if there's another element of the mission, like we saw over the weekend, where the United States capability can get it done and Israel can't, they don't have the B-2s and the bunker busters, then I think the president would go back for war. But I think the goal is to say, deter Iran from striking American forces around the world, deter them from hitting American forces in the United States, and hope that Israel can do what both the United States and Israel say they want, which is to eliminate that missile capability and that nuclear capability.
We're getting some of the video now that we're going to put up. Sorry, Mark, this is all just breaking news in real time here.
I'm a breaking news guy, Phil.
No, I know. So, and by the way, feel free to check your phone, Mark, if you're getting sources and you're getting information too live on air. The skies of Qatar are lighting up right now as interceptions seem to be occurring, and we're going to try to load up those videos. Mark, what does this say for the MAGA doctrine, for the Trump doctrine? If there is an off-ramp, President Trump has kind of created a third way. We've kind of always existed in, hey, either you're a dove or you're a hawk. President Trump has always existed kind of in between those two modalities. What does this mean for the Trump doctrine and the Trump foreign policy worldview?
Speak loudly, carry a big stick, use it when necessary, and no boots on the ground. I find people who are surprised by how President Trump is handling this to be guilty of not paying attention. He's doing exactly what he said he would do. I think people say, well, this is a slippery slope. No, he's not going to put boots on the ground. There are not going to be American forces on the ground. There's going to be no nation building. There's going to be no attempt to win the hearts and minds of the Iranian people. There'll be a lot of rhetoric about how the Iranian people, as the president put on Truth Social yesterday, how the Iranian people should consider changing their government because their government has not performed in their best interest. I think you'll continue to see that, and I think you'll continue to see overwhelming force used to take out whatever needs to be taken out to make sure that Iran cannot be a nuclear power. Other than that, I think it's up to the Iranian government. If they kill an American, one single American, then I think you'll see massive retaliation. And the president made that clear to them. That doesn't mean boots on the ground. We've got extraordinary air power. The Israelis have helped clear the way by making the Iranian Air Force and anti-air capacity quite limited. And so I think the president, as he said over the weekend, and the experts I talked to concur, the mission that was carried out over the weekend is the tough one. The ability of the United States to destroy government buildings, political things, bases, the Navy, that's fish in a barrel for the U.S. military.
All right, we have some visuals. I just want to put this up on screen of some of the interceptions that are happening over Qatar. Now, remember, this is very ballsy for Iran to do because Qatar and Iran, I don't want to say they're allies, but there's definitely something that's been going on there with oil, and they're closer than Saudi Arabia and Iran. So this is quite a maneuver for Iran to do. But look at that, those interceptions happening over the skies of Qatar right now. That is real stuff. I mean, those ballistic missiles could take out hundreds of people if it hits a certain target. And so, Mark, stay right there. I want to tell our audience one of our sponsors, and then our partners. We're going to go straight to the break. Go to donewithdebt.com. Done with Debt is great. If you guys are in debt right now, I encourage you guys to go to Done with Debt. Wasn't supposed to get as bad as it is. I know a lot of you guys in debt are looking to get out of it. It's called Done with Debt, and they're not like other debt relief companies. They don't push loans or bankruptcy on you. Done with Debt are legendary negotiators who go head-to-head with your credit card loan companies. They have one goal: to drastically reduce or eliminate your debt altogether. And unlike those others, Done with Debt moves lightning fast. Those clients see more money in their pocket month one, but a word to the wise: hurry, because some of their brilliant debt erasing strategies are time sensitive. Visit donewithdebt.com. That is donewithdebt.com. So check it out right now, donewithdebt.com. Make sure that you do not have another bill payment until you talk to a Done with Debt strategist. Go to donewithdebt.com. That is donewithdebt.com. Email us as always, freedom@charliekirk.com. Visuals are coming in. We do not yet have any confirmation of a missile hitting a U.S. base yet. But there are more missiles being launched right now. Stay right there. Mark Halpern continues after the break. Okay, Mark Halpern continues with us. Mark, right now, looks like initial reports show that all missiles were intercepted so far. We need triple confirmation on that. I don't know what your reporting is showing as well. But that could be another victory for President Trump to show the capacity for the U.S. military to intercept these missiles. There's also alarms that are ringing in Iraq and Bahrain. And the source of the interception is probably aerial interception and also Patriot missiles from the bases. Again, we need triple confirmation on that. So, Mark, really quick, what do you make of the politics of all of this and kind of the response that you've seen from MAGA faithful over the last couple of days? You're very uniquely positioned as a reporter to comment on this. As we get more information about this aerial attack against U.S. bases, what do you make of the politics of all this?
Well, on the Republican side, I think the stories about, MAGA meltdown are exaggerated. There's a few. This is
Hi, this is Chris Mitchell with CBN News here in our Jerusalem studio with our continuing coverage of Operation Rising. Hi, this is Chris Mitchell with CBN News here in our Jerusalem.
For so many years, and now that it was taken away from them almost completely, they will try to exert pressure and create damage to this region. But I think that this is the beginning of the end, and I think that their proxies know that, and they are going to be left alone in this front, now not just against Israel, but also against the United States of America, which, by the way, we are really happy to the USA for joining this battle and standing with Israel in this fight against evil.
Yeah, you're beginning of the end, and some people believe the beginning of perhaps a new era here in the Middle East. We'll be talking more, but first, here's our update story from today, talking about what happened over the weekend.
Defense officials detailed the attack, which was the largest B-2 bomber operation in history, and the first use of the 15-ton massive ordnance penetrator, a bunker-busting bomb capable of penetrating deep underground.
At approximately 6:40 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 2:10 a.m. Iran time, the lead B-2 dropped two GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator weapons on the first of several aim points at Fordow. As the president stated last night, the remaining bombers then hit their targets as well, with a total of 14 MOPs dropped against two nuclear target areas.
The scope and scale of what occurred last night would take the breath away of almost any American if you had an opportunity to watch it in real time. Planes flew from the middle of America in Missouri overnight, completely undetected over three of their most highly sensitive sites, and we were able to destroy nuclear capabilities, and our boys in those bombers are on their way home right now.
Before and after satellite images show the destruction to all three sites, but there are concerns Iran might have moved some of the enriched uranium beforehand.
Just hours after the U.S. hit the nuclear sites
Can I
in
have
Natanz,
shower?
Fordow, and Isfahan, this was the
No.
answer of the Islamic regime.
It's too early, AG. You can shower.
This one hit north
You have plenty of time. Give me the phone, please.
But about 20 injuries, and you can see the damage behind me.
Unfortunately, we're talking about a continuous pattern of the Iranian barrage of missiles targeting our civilian communities. The threat of Iran and that regime is not just a threat against Israel. It's a threat against all Western ideology. A regime that calls for the death of Israel, but also the death of the United States. We're in this together.
We're not at war with Iran. We're at war with Iran's nuclear program.
Vice President J.D. Vance told NBC News the U.S. wants Iran to return to the negotiating table to seek peace.
What we've said to the Iranians is we do not want war with Iran. We actually want peace. but we want peace in the context of them not having a nuclear weapons program, and that's exactly what the president accomplished last night.
But later on Truth Social, President Trump posted this. It's not politically correct to use the term regime change, but if the current Iranian regime is unable to make Iran great again, why wouldn't there be a regime change? MAGA or Make Iran Great Again. Iran's foreign minister says the time for diplomacy is over.
There is no red line that they have not crossed. And the last one, and the most dangerous one, was happened only last night, when they crossed a very big red line by attacking nuclear facilities. I don't know how much room is left for diplomacy. We are now calculating the damages.
After the strike, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu honored President Trump.
History will record that President Trump acted to deny the world's most dangerous regime the world's most dangerous weapons. His leadership today has created a pivot of history that can help lead the Middle East and beyond to a future of prosperity and peace.
Sunday, Netanyahu said Israel is now close to achieving its goals against Iran and won't engage in a war of attrition. Netanyahu also went to the Western Wall, saying prayers for the IDF, security forces, the hostages, and President Trump.
And Am Tel Aviv, come.
A people has risen up as a lion. We will continue to do wonders and miracles to ensure the eternity of Israel for generations.
Wow, what a couple of days this has been. Here we are Monday afternoon, and we're talking about what happened, Saturday night with the attack by what's called a midnight hammer. And tell us, what do you think the impact is? How did you feel when you heard about the attack?
I felt encouraged. I felt that we are not alone. I felt that there is a superpower that cares about doing good in this region. And I want to say thank you to the United States for joining this battle with Israel, with the Israeli Air Force against this regional power in this Middle East. Iran is a regional power, or at least was before all these attacks by Israel and by the United States of America. And it is 10 times bigger than the state of Israel. So I think that, first of all, the achievements of the Israeli Air Force and the strategic capabilities, the intelligence abilities to reach the generals of the IRGC, to reach the missile ballistic launchers, to reach the stockpiles, to plan this Mossad underground operation in the Islamic Republic of Iran for more than a year is just amazing. But the missing part was the help from the United States of America with the, super bunker buster bombs that were able to penetrate into the Fordo, Isfahan, and the Natanz facilities. And now it looks like the goals and the objectives of this operation are close to being reached, with 60% of the ballistic missile launchers being destroyed and the nuclear facility being almost completely destroyed. So I think we're at a very, very good point. I would like to make sure to let our viewers know that I don't think that this is because the IDF is so smart, is so capable, and so great. I still think that every day that Israel is still on the map is a proof that God is performing modern day biblical level miracles in Israel. Every missile that is being intercepted is a miracle. It's life saved here on the ground. And I think that God is using Israel to prove to the world that he still is a powerful God. Like he was in the Bible times, he's still today performing miracles, and he's faithful. And that's why all these enemies want to destroy us. That's the only reason. We don't have gold, we don't have oil, we don't have natural resources. What we have is the promises of God. And that's what the enemies of Israel cannot stand. So we're fighting here a war between good and evil. I feel great to be on the side of God, and now the United States is also on that side in this war.
Yeah, it's a great perspective, Yair. That's why I thought it was so great that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu went to the wall yesterday to put a prayer in the wall itself and to pray for the IDF, for the hostages, for the soldiers, and for this success of this Operation Rising Lion that comes out of the Book of Numbers. The other thing I saw you here, when President Trump made the decision and made the announcement of the attack, Midnight Hammer, he said, "We love God." And I don't know if you heard that, but that was amazing. And we were talking about it earlier today, where we can't remember any president of the U.S. just saying, "We love God." And I think that just came from his heart. And as you said, this really is a battle, a biblical battle in many ways, where good and evil are fighting each other, and really the nations of the world, and particularly right now Iran, are really coming again, trying to destroy the people of God and the people of Israel.
Yeah, definitely, Chris. And I wanted to say something that I think many people do not focus on these aspects, that this is a war that is being fought on multiple fronts. So you have the physical front that Israel is winning with the Air Force, also in the Gaza Strip with tanks, with soldiers against Hezbollah in Lebanon. We're winning the physical front of this war. But there's another front that we are losing on. And that's the front for the perspective, for the public opinion, for the truth. And sadly, the enemy is spreading lies, is spreading deceit. And the public opinion around the world is anti-Israel, pro-terrorism, pro-Iran, pro-Hamas. Israel, despite defending itself for more than 620 days, is called the aggressor in this situation after being attacked by 7 different fronts, after having hostages in the Gaza Strip, still until today. And this is something that I want to say thank you to you and to CBN for standing up and sharing the truth from Israel. What me and my TVN Israel team here have been doing since day one of this war is creating daily boots on the ground programs on YouTube, on broadcast, just to share from the perspective of Israelis like me that go to the army, that serve, what's happening here and how can people pray for the situation. Because as I said, this is a spiritual war. And how do you fight a spiritual war, Chris? You pray. Right? You pray, and prayer works. It's an amazing tool, prayer, because God is listening to every word that we're saying. So I encourage all of you guys back at home to understand what's happening in this region and pray for the peace of Jerusalem. But make it personal when you pray. Pray for like a soldier, for a hostage, for a specific situation, for a leader to make wise decisions. There are many things to pray for, but make it personal. And if you need help, ask God, what do you want me to pray about? And he'll give you the answer.
That's so true, Yair. That's the battlefront we're praying on, and that's the battlefield right now. And you at TBN, thanks for what you said about CBN. TBN is doing an amazing job on these front lines of the battle for truth and to pray. You, Mati Shushani, our good friend Eric Seckelback, Sheila Walsh, Matt Crouch, really on the front lines of this battle to try to get out the right information. What the world has done is sort of turn things upside down. The word here in Hebrew is a fuk. It's like, it's opposite of what's really happening. And as you say, Israel is fighting a 7-front war, but the 8th front, I would say, is this battle for truth. You were saying earlier about the IDF. The glory goes to God, but the credit, in many ways, is this incredible military operation by the IDF and extraordinary intelligence inside Iran that actually can identify the commanders of the IRGC, of the Iranian army, and eliminate some of these men that have been really trying to destroy the state of Israel. What do you think right now, Yair, are some of the threats that are remaining? You say we're at the beginning of the end. What threats does Iran still have against Israel and maybe U.S. forces in the region?
Okay, so Iran is a disruptive force in this region. What Iran has been planning to do and what it has the capabilities of doing is to disrupt So what can they disrupt, okay? One thing that they can disrupt, and they've already been doing it via the Houthis in Yemen, is to disrupt the maritime shippings, the ships that are delivering goods in the Strait of Hormuz. For example, that's the 20% of the world's oil is being shipped from this strait, and at its narrowest point it's only like 30 kilometers. So with their ships and with their navy, they're able to freeze all movement from that strait, which will automatically jump the prices of oil around the world. Okay, so this is one thing that they can do. It will be kind of harmful for them, first of all, because they are also exporting a lot of this oil. So by stopping the movement, it will harm themselves also. But I don't think that at this stage the Ayatollah regime cares about its own people, its economy. They only care about their survival. That's one. Second is that they have been investing in terrorism for more than
Genesis chapter.
I speak now to the biblical scholar and historian Wesley Hub. Wesley, good to have you back on Uncensored. A lot of people theorizing that there is a religious component to everything that is going on currently in the Middle East. Do you think that?
Yeah, well, let me right off the bat say that my area is not geopolitics, and so I can't speak to whether any one particular nation or group right now has fulfilled some sort of criteria for just war in the very recent past. That's, I think, for others to say. But what I can speak to, Pierce, are the ways that the Bible and Christian heritage that I share in have considered this very complicated topic over the centuries, because it would be somewhat foolhardy to forget that the heavy reality of war that I don't think we should ever speak lightly of. You know, as Jesus himself said, those who live by the sword will die by the sword. So we see throughout Christian scripture in places like Ephesians chapter 6 and 2 Corinthians 10, the topic of waging war with preaching and words and persuasion rather than weapons. And so I think we should aim to persuade people if we can, but the reality of broken humanity, that even, you know, the conversations that we've all been having, you personally have been having even just now, is that not all people can be persuaded. And so theory and philosophizing about what should happen in an ideal world often get muddy when the rubber hits the road of this beautiful yet broken world that we live in.
I know that you don't, you're not a pacifist, but it's interesting where the moral line is for people in terms of when war is justified. You know, sometimes you can look at a conflict like World War II, and you can say, well, clearly the Nazis represented an existential threat to the world and had to be defeated. So therefore, waging war against them was a necessity and morally justified. But a lot of other conflicts, including what is happening in the Middle East, many would argue, are much more complicated, much more nuanced, much more historical in terms of their complexity. How do we work out what is moral in that kind of scenario?
Yeah, it's a very important question. Just war theory is a theory that portrayed, well, let me say right off the bat, actually, just war is not holy war. And I think that's important right off the bat, Pierce, because jihad and just war are concepts that are completely in different universes. The idea of just war that we kind of tease out, especially when we're talking about very complicated geopolitical issues like we're discussing this morning, come from these ideas in the late 3rd and early 4th centuries, where soldiers would come to Christian clergy and intellectuals seeking advice regarding their careers. We have records of Roman tribunes writing to people like St. Augustine, asking whether it's possible to provide state security in a vaguely Christian way. And so we have these records of individuals like Augustine writing, a seminal work, City of God, right after the sacking of Rome by the Visigoths in August 24th of 410 AD. And he doesn't write to make sense of the violence viewed, but to point out that no earthly realm, not even a Christian empire, could be an eternal city, which was what Rome is thought of. For a long time, it was referred to it as the eternal city. And Augustine points out that the only city that will ever be eternal is in the hereafter, and when things are made new. And so until then, in this fallen in-between time, there is some necessity for state to enforce and restrain evil for the sake of good. You know, you threaten my neighbor, I have to intervene, Augustine says. You're not being moved by persuasion, and so I must force you to stop. But Augustine is clear when he talks about just war that it's never holy and certainly not happy, even in victory. So war should only ever be done in kind of the Christian tradition that large portion of the West stands in defense of innocent people, and for the idea of trying to, not for the idea of trying to wipe out people off the face of the earth or some sort of private interest. That's evil. And that victories, celebration should even come with tears and remorse.
Really interesting. I had a debate the other day with a pro-Palestinian who was arguing that Hamas had not targeted people based on their religion, i.e. being Jewish or their ethnicity, but on the fact that they objected to what they saw as an illegal occupation of Gaza and so on. And that was what inspired it. It wasn't a religious war in the sense that you just explained. I mean, do you think there's validity to that, or is that nonsense?
I mean, it's complicated when you factor in Islam and the fact that it is far more of a politico-religious movement. You know, it's very different in the inception of Islam in the 7th century than the inception of Christianity. Even when we look at certain instances of, you know, atrocities done in the name of Christianity throughout history, something, you know, maybe the Crusades are coming to mind for certain peoples. The Christian worldview makes the atrocities within the Crusades problematic. So what do you call the Crusades conducted under the banner of Muhammad? Well, you call it business as usual. He was a warlord, and so to fight in his legacy is expected, but to do so under the banner of the cross should seem ironic, because Christ died for his enemies. And Christianity makes sense of our justifiably cringe, you know, mentality when we see some of these problematic situations throughout history where people are trying to invoke Christianity or religion in those ways. But it is complicated. These are multivalent issues that encompass, you know, all sorts of factors.
Fascinating. Leslie Hart, great to have you back. Thank you very much.
Very good to be here. Thank you.
Here's Morgan Uncensored is proudly independent. The only boss around here is me. To enjoy our show, we offer only one simple thing. Hit subscribe on YouTube and follow Piers Morgan Uncensored on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And in return, we will continue our mission to inform, irritate, and entertain. And we'll do it all for free. Independent, uncensored media has never been more critical, and we couldn't do it without you.
My name's Wesley. I am a central candidate.
What if I told you that a civilization survived 2,500 years of invasions, conquests, and revolutions?
We just heard about artifacts.
A day after the U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, U.S. President Donald Trump hailed the operation as a major success and is now hinting. A day after the U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities, U.S. President Donald Trump hailed the operation as a major success and is now hinting at regime change in the Islamic State.
In social media posts, President Donald Trump questioned the possibility of regime change, saying it's not politically correct to use the term, but the current Iran regime is unable to make Iran great again. So why wouldn't there be regime change? In a separate post, Trump claimed that the U.S. strikes had caused monumental damage to Iran's nuclear sites. Trump posted, "Obliteration is an accurate term. The biggest damage took place far below ground level," adding the word bullseye. At the Pentagon, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth claimed the U.S. strikes obliterated Iran's nuclear ambitions and that the strikes should bring them back to the negotiating table. He said the attack was intentionally limited to nuclear targets and not aimed at regime change.
Thanks to President Trump's bold and visionary leadership and his commitment to peace through strength, Iran's nuclear ambitions have been obliterated. Many presidents have dreamed of delivering the final blow to Iran's nuclear program, and none could until President Trump.
The U.S. employed 14 bunker buster bombs, more than 24 Tomahawk missiles, and over 125 military aircraft in the operation they named Midnight Hammer. Washington warned Tehran against responding to the strikes and instead returning to the negotiation table. The head of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Kane, said the initial assessment is that all three sites, Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan, sustained extremely severe damage and destruction.
This was the largest B-2 operational strike in U.S. history and the second longest B-2 mission ever flown, exceeded only by those in the days following 9/11. Our forces remain on high alert and are fully postured to respond to any Iranian retaliation or proxy attacks, which would be an incredibly poor choice. We will defend ourselves.
And U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance told NBC News that the strikes destroyed the Iranian nuclear program and emphasized that the U.S. is not at war with Iran, but only with its nuclear program.
And Israel is continuing strikes on Iranian ballistic missile launch sites amid continuing efforts to limit the Iranian ability to fire at Israel. IDF Chief Eyal Zamir said that following the U.S. strikes on Iranian nuclear sites, Operation Rising Lion had reached a turning point. More from ILTV's Steve Lubitz.
Israeli aircraft struck political symbols in Tehran for the first time since the start of the war. Defense Minister Katz said Israel is today hitting Iranian regime targets, including government offices of oppression in the heart of Tehran. Targets included the notorious Evin prison for political prisoners and the so-called destruction of the Israel clock in Palestine Square. There were no reports of injuries in the strike on the prison, apparently intended to allow detainees to escape. The clock counts down what it describes as the destruction of Israel by 2040. The Air Force completed a fresh wave of strikes in Iran, with over 15 fighter jets involved in the Kermanshah area of western Iran. They targeted missile launch sites. The Air Force said it destroyed several ballistic missile storage and launch sites that were aimed at Israel. IDF Chief Eyal Zamir said that Israel had reached a turning point in Operation Rising Lion after the U.S. strikes, but there are still objectives to complete. Zamir said that he sees the coordination between the militaries of the two nations as a significant strategic asset. The Army chief stressed that the operation is not over and was proceeding according to operational plans.
צריך לזכור, המערכה נמשכת, יש לנו עוד מטרות לתקוף ויעדים להשלים. אנחנו ממשיכים להגביר את קצב התקיפות שלנו בהתאם לתוכנית ואנחנו עורכים להמשיך ככל שידרש.
Zamir had this to say to the citizens of Israel.
הימים האלו הם ימים מאתגרים לחברה הישראלית כולה. רק הבוקר נורא שוב מטח לעבר יישובי מדינת ישראל. בזכות ההתנהלות האחראית של האזרחים שלנו, הפגיעות מצטמצמות באופן משמעותי. החוסן בעורף נותן לנו את הכוח להמשיך בחזית.
And Israelis across the country were under attack this morning at 3 a.m. and again at around 9 a.m. after Iran launched several salvos of ballistic missiles. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian takes you inside the bomb shelter where people were staying overnight.
Lidar sirens sounded across Israel this morning after Iran launched 4 different waves of ballistic missile attacks. We know that no injuries were reported and there was minor damage from a few direct hits that were made. One of them actually happened close to a strategic electrical facility in the south of Israel. But many people are living their lives in a pretty different way across Israel. Right now, I am standing about 4 floors underground in a parking garage that also operates as a bomb shelter. You can see all different types of tents, large tents, small tents surrounding me. There is life underground, and here's how Israelis are living here. Welcome to the Underground, a parking garage located under a mall in central Israel that is now operating as a bomb shelter for dozens of people and families. Many have been staying overnight for days, camping out inside of these tents as Iranian ballistic missiles continue to target civilian areas across the country.
Like a very big camping without nature.
This is Ori, originally from Bat Yam, who has been seeking shelter for the last 2 weeks since her building doesn't have a protected space.
I don't have a safe place to stay, and I want to be quiet when I'm going to sleep, you know?
Last week, she stayed in Petah Tikva with her friends until the building suffered a direct hit from a missile.
We were lucky. He was in a safe place, so you're okay. Like I lost my ear on this side. I can't hear on this side.
Nearly 2.6 million people don't have proper shelters in Israel, according to a 2020 report. Families setting up shop inside of this parking garage brought blow-up mattresses and even created makeshift living rooms. Ori is here with her dog Magic, combating this stressful situation together.
This is my country. I don't have any other country. And I trust my army. I know the army do whatever they can. The government try to do whatever they can in their weird ways. And I hope things will get better.
With so many Israelis lacking a protected space, either inside of their buildings or inside of their apartments, some people here say they plan on sticking it out inside of this parking garage until the conflict is over. Lidar?
Thank you, Shosh, for the report, taking us live into the bomb shelter. Prime Minister Netanyahu says that after the U.S. attacks on Iranian nuclear facilities, Israel is close to meeting its war goals in Iran. We go back to ILTV's Steve Leibovitz for the report.
Only hours after the U.S. attack on Iran, Prime Minister Netanyahu went to the highly symbolic Western Wall in Jerusalem's Old City, where he placed a note in the crack saying, "A person that rises up as a lion lifts himself up." Later, Netanyahu said he knew about U.S. strikes on Iran at least 24 hours in advance of the attack. Speaking after President Trump said the U.S. had obliterated Iran's key nuclear sites, Netanyahu said U.S. involvement brought